Hey there, everyone! Well, Easter is over, which means we all get to return to some rewrite fun. I really turned my brain off over the weekend, so it took me a couple days to turn it back on. What happened last time? We learned about the Dreadlands, which is a little boost of flavor in my version of Naruto. And of course, Gobi, the five-tailed beast, resides somewhere here. Team Kurenai with Ino, Shikamaru, and Sasuke are on the coastal raiding party. Team Asuma with Naruto, Sakura, and Tenten are running the mainland with the brunt of the Leaf forces. Team Guy is making their way through the Dreadlands themselves. This last one is a bit of a gamble with great payoff, so everyone will be extremely careful through these parts. That's right, nearly everyone we care about is pushing through the land of rock. Nearly? Yes, Minato is still at home, serving as its protector while Jiraiya is gone with 3 Jonin to find Shisui and rescue Choji. But Minato's still getting some action. Unoki managed to sneak a respectable army around the Leaf and press Konoha itself. Minato and a handful of the Anbu was all that was needed to rout this army. But who am I kidding? It's been a week for me, and it's only probably been seconds for some of you. So let's stop with the typical recap and dive right into this episode. Team Kurenai march in a close formation through the constant rain. Traveling together with the coastal party are a regiment of sand shinobi to help bolster their forces. The coastal party are also keeping to the woods to avoid being spotted. Of course, if they followed the beach itself, they'd stick out like a sore thumb. And the last village along the coast was just about an hour's run from the capital. It was one of the very few integral villages to capture as a jumping-off point to assault the capital. The coastal party assumed that this last village would certainly be more solidly defended, but they were still planning quiet assassination. Still a few days' walk from the village, Kurenai decides that her team might as well train in the interim. She asks Ino to showcase her water style. She figures that it was a boost from the Sanbi, but when Might Guy told her Ino was able to conjure water on the fly and in the desert, it certainly raised an eyebrow. After some observation, Kurenai shows Ino the basics of the water bullet jutsu so that she can have a reliable, simple offensive jutsu. The nice thing about the bullet jutsu is that it exists in all elemental forms. Learn it for one element, and you know how to do it for any other elements you learn. Ino recounts how Might Guy kept on drilling into her using her mind transfer jutsu while still moving. In the end, it's an impossible feat, but it allowed Ino to learn how to concentrate even on new jutsu while moving. She wondered now what she couldn't do while moving. For Sasuke, Kurenai tells him that genjutsu can be a very cheap method of repositioning your opponent. Tales from the border dispute revealed that he could now use a rather hefty boulder jutsu on demand. Instead of conjuring out the boulder and using up so much chakra, Kurenai suggests using a genjutsu to create a fake. This would simultaneously scare his opponent, make them move, and save him the chakra he needed for several other tricks throughout any given fight. He tells her that he already copied a basic genjutsu from Sakura and illustrates it for her. Kurenai asks him why he copied it, since it's the basic technique they'd have learned in Academy. Sakura has since figured out how to make the Genin level technique seem Chunin level, but the jutsu itself certainly isn't so. With the Sharingan's copied jutsu, Sasuke doesn't have to form any hand seals. It was a really easy and fast technique to pick up on for some instant trickery. Sasuke shrugs and tells Kurenai that he can always overwrite it with a better jutsu. Kurenai shows Sasuke a cloning genjutsu that affects abilities rather than the body. At first, he'll only be able to use it for simple ninjutsu and shuriken jutsu. However, once he becomes better and smarter with it, he'll be able to create illusory taijutsu and fake ninjutsu that he doesn't even know. It's one of the rare jutsu that can be performed at Genin, Chunin, and even Jonin level with obviously different effects. But even if he's a prodigy, it could still take many months to get comfortable with the ability. He shrugs again, insisting that Kurenai doesn't know how the Sharingan works. As long as he sees it in action and copies it, there shouldn't be any learning curve. That's the beauty of copy jutsu. However, he can only copy so many jutsu, 6 at the max, once he unlocks that many Tomo on his Sharingan. Pulling Shikamaru with her, and ahead of Ino and Sasuke, she begins whispering to him his own training. Falling back to walk beside Ino, the latter clears her throat, and when Sasuke looks at her, she barely manages to whisper out a question about his Sharingan. Ino asks how many Tomo he has currently. 4. He has 4 Tomo, which is regrettable. He thought that after his run-in with Shisui, the proximity to his family's killer would enrage and awaken his full Sharingan. Forgetting himself, Sasuke whispers something about the clan tablet being misleading. Ino tries to ask about this tablet, but she loses her voice again, cursing herself for lacking the conviction to talk to some boy. Clearing his own throat, Sasuke seems to struggle himself before asking Ino how difficult she's finding the water bullet. Snapping to the attention of her practice, Ino gushes about how easy it is before leaning towards Sasuke and whispering that her beast's affinity is to water. She didn't think she'd be this good this fast, but just as fast as she picks up water jutsu, she seems to master it. She thinks that eventually she'll learn the shadow style like Naruto has. Pausing for a moment of thought, she asks Sasuke if he knows what the fox's chakra affinity is. Puzzled by the question, he asks why she thinks he would ever know. He's known Naruto longer than everyone else, but he's also kept Naruto at a distance his whole life as well. Sasuke knows that he shouldn't, given Naruto's situation, but he had such resentment when he was a child about how his mom spent her time. And then, of course, his family was taken overnight, and while he was being trained with Naruto by Jiraiya at that exact moment. Naruto initially didn't have the aptitude for any of the jutsu his dad kept trying to train him, so they hammered in the basics. Meanwhile, every time Sasuke tried to learn any of those same jutsu, he was pushed to arm's reach, as if those jutsu were made specific for Naruto and no one else. Looking at his hand, Sasuke swears he could learn the Rasengan, if given the opportunity. Stopping, Sasuke realizes that he's just dumped a lot of his frustrations in what might seem to be confusing order to Ino. But instead of feeling pushed away, she's leaning, ensconced by the information. This was exactly what she wanted, information about Naruto. Reframing, Sasuke tells her that he doesn't really know anything about Naruto. He should, but he never really cared to as a kid. Ironically enough, Naruto's closer to him now than any of his surviving Uchiha family, and they're not even close. Ino tells him that the next time they see Naruto, he should forgive him. After his outburst during the Chunin exams, it became pretty obvious that he hated how much time Naruto got with his mother. But it was never Naruto's intent to offend Sasuke. And Sasuke knows that, Ino assures him. Everyone knows that the Uchiha are capable of greater love than any of the known clans. Sasuke should utilize some of that with Naruto. Sasuke gives Ino a thoughtful look and wonders why she was so awkward during their academy days. Ahead of these two, Kurenai and Shikamaru are also talking. Shikamaru leads the conversation with why the teams were reworked in exactly this way. He tells her that there can be some very real problems with Team Kurenai for missing a sensor ninja, but the other teams are themselves lopsided. Team Guy has 2 sensor ninja in it, and Team Asuma seems to be the only well-rounded team. Surely Lord Hokage knew this and could have planned a bit better. Kurenai rolls her eyes and tells him that, yeah, all teams would perform best if perfectly balanced. However, it's a teacher's greatest wish for any assortment of 3 people to work incredibly well together. Perhaps, just perhaps, that's what the Hokage is trying to do. If everyone works together, they'll eventually work incredibly together. For example, every team needs a backup leader. If the Jonin is taken out, the team should be able to remain as a unit with distinct instructions. Looking back at the other 2, Kurenai tells them to elect a team captain for her absence. Sasuke immediately tells her it's Shikamaru. They'd already decided this in their previous team. Ino nods, content with the choice. Looking back to Shikamaru, Kurenai tells him that's a perfect example of how the team makeup shouldn't matter. Sasuke's probably capable of leading, and he's a Chunin no less, but he didn't fight for it. He let Shikamaru take it uncontested. That's the kind of cohesion that they want everyone to have. Suddenly eyeing Shikamaru suspiciously, Kurenai asks if he's asking these questions to get out of training. Rubbing the back of his neck uncomfortably, he insists that he had to be sure that there was a plan in place for everyone. Focused up, Kurenai asks him about his flexibility on the shadow style as a member of the Nara clan. He tells her that their Hiden technique is a very specific aspect of shadow style, and he's never trained beyond it. His father's taught Minato a knockoff variant of their shadow style to help rein in the Jinchuriki, but it won't ever be as good as the real thing. Nodding, Kurenai asks him to try and learn this technique, as it will wildly enhance his shadow possession if he can nail it down. Shikamaru is dubious. Shadow style is synonymous with Jinchuriki because all of the beasts possess the shadow affinity. He poses the idea that shadow style is kept for Kage and tailed beasts because it's so incredibly difficult to wield. The only reason he can do it is because his family's cultivated a very specific aspect of it over generations. But for a genin to branch out to other areas of shadow style is a very dangerous task. Shadow style isn't like fire or water or any of the other elements. It's unwieldy, like dropping molten metal into cold water. How is he meant to handle the shadow when its very nature could stir chaos? Kurenai tells him that he doesn't have to learn any more of it if he doesn't want to. However, it is a great advantage to have the knowledge of shadow style from such a young age. And the more comfortable he is with it, the more skilled he is with it, the better he'll be able to protect Ino. Kurenai winks at him and asks again if he's willing to learn the technique. Glancing back at Ino as she talks and whispers herself with Sasuke, Shikamaru sighs and tells Kurenai that there's no harm in at least learning how the technique works. Kurenai tells him that she doesn't know very many techniques herself, and most of it is self-learning. However, she believes that Shadow Style Shadow's creation would be the perfect addition to his ensemble. It is by itself neither offensive or even defensive, but its utility is nearly unparalleled for a master of shadow. This jutsu takes advantage of even the smallest shadows beneath blades of grass and gives them a great boost. It results in shadows forming from seemingly anywhere you choose. She has seen Lord Hokage use it in action before, and of course a genius himself, he can use it with ease to create shadow clones from targeted areas. Reaching their last targeted village finally, Kurenai looks up at the parting clouds as the rain finally ends. They'd been marching for 2 days, making sure to rest and always be ready for anything that comes their way. But just as soon as the rain finally let up, a slow fog began to descend on the area. Perturbed that it was possibly a jutsu conjured to keep the Leaf Ninja at bay, the captain of the coastal forces, Baki of the Sand, orders an immediate offensive. Team Kurenai's orders are the same: to guard the village's north exit and prevent any ninja from fleeing to the capital to convey news of an assault. They're planning a quick and quiet series of assassinations, but should anything go awry, Team Kurenai will stand ready to assist. If the fog's meant to throw them astray, it's only succeeded in guaranteeing them cover. As they circle around the exit they're meant to cover, Ino feels a headache coming on. Kurenai tells them to stay closer as the fog thickens, because who knows just how thick it'll get. Shikamaru suggests a diamond formation so there's always at least 2 people in view of each other. Sasuke tells him it's a stupid idea. A lineup would do just as well and would keep them all from being struck by a surprise jutsu. Kurenai tells them they're both wrong. They need to simply stay close as they travel. Forget the formation. They're not themselves marching into combat yet, so they needn't worry about formations. Ino tells all 3 of them to calm down, confused as to why they've suddenly become irrational. Alone. A whispering from within Ino echoes. It nearly stops her in her tracks. The Sanbi very rarely talks of its own accord, so she wonders why it chose to speak now, and why that word, alone? Kurenai stops the group as they hit sand and uses hand gestures to position them along the beach. Are you talking to me? Ino attempts, using just her thoughts, to speak to the Sanbi. Silence resounds back to her. Who's alone? She asks, expecting nothing in return. The Sanbi has never actively answered any of her questions in living memory. It'll sometimes respond to conversation going on around her, but it generally ignores her directly. And even more rarely does she ever understand its few words. Projecting a massive boulder suddenly, Sasuke leaps into action as a rock ninja appears from the fog. The ninja has no time to dodge the boulder in such close proximity, so he swipes upward at the boulder, perhaps to lift its trajectory? Instead, the boulder passes straight through him, and Sasuke lands a well-aimed kunai into his shoulder. Continuing his momentum, Sasuke loops around the ninja's shoulders and lands the man in a headlock as he waits for the team to help him neutralize the target. Kurenai leaps to assist, inwardly dumbfounded by Sasuke's genius. Regardless of Lady Tsunade's words, or even Lord Hokage's, Kurenai found herself in denial that someone could learn a jutsu that quickly. It took 2 days. 2 for Sasuke to elevate a brand new jutsu to Chunin level. However, he did still lack the resolve to kill a known enemy, having to lock the enemy in place so Kurenai could finish them off. Carrying the body into the bushes nearby, they returned to their posts. He even detected the shinobi far sooner than the other two ever would have. Perhaps the Sharingan was more perceptive than she gave it credit for. She hadn't ever worked with an Uchiha before, so this was all new to her. Shikamaru reveals that shadows are scattered by fog during the day due to light's refraction, so he'll be a crippled asset for the time being. Sasuke laughs uncharacteristically and mocks him for being defeated by fog. Ino tries to get Kurenai to silence their weird fighting, but she ignores Ino altogether, letting the two argue over something so stupid. Shikamaru tells Sasuke that without the fog, his genjutsu would have never worked. It was so obvious. Sasuke suggests using it on Shikamaru. Let's see if that'll change his mind. Ino asks the group, what's happening? They're well rested, they've eaten, and they haven't even fought once up to this point. What's going on? Shikamaru waves his hands dismissively at Sasuke and tells him he doesn't need this headache, breaking formation and running into the fog toward the village. Ino now yells at Kurenai that she's not doing her job. Seemingly snapping back to reality, Kurenai yells for Sasuke and Ino to keep their post while she retrieves Shikamaru. Glaring at Sasuke, Ino asks him what was that all about? Shaking his head, Sasuke tells her to mind her own business. While they stand alone, they notice the fog grow thicker yet. Though their individual positions were about 20 feet apart, they had to adjust for the growing fog and get a little bit closer to each other. Just as the silence between them grows awkward, a dull thud powerful enough to quake the ground emanates from the village. Sasuke guesses that some sort of explosion went off, but remains where he stands. Ino wonders if they should go in, but the suggestion is instantly cut down by Sasuke, who insists that they need to keep to their post. The next thing they hear is a large clattering, and before they know it, what seems to be an entire population of the village collides into them. Lost immediately in the crowd, Sasuke loses track of Ino, and before he can leap to freedom, he's bulldozed by several larger citizens. Devoured by the crowd herself, Ino tries to shout for Sasuke, but the stomping and screaming of the fleeing citizens deafens her to her own voice. Stopped by Kurenai, Shikamaru struggles fruitlessly against her grip, and she pulls him back. A swirl of sand forms, a gentle tornado, as Baki at its center uses the sand to push the fog away. Dozens of rock ninja are revealed by this tactic, dozens who are within shuriken distance of Kurenai and Shikamaru. Pushing him down behind her, Kurenai weaves several dozen signs as fast as she can. A weird gray falls down around Shikamaru and the rest of the shinobi. Kurenai pulls him back to his feet and shouts for him to run. No one can see anything right now. Shikamaru is struck by the wonder of seeing a Jonin-level genjutsu. As Baki lifted the fog for them to see, Kurenai dropped a false fog on the enemy ninja whilst keeping allies out of its effect. However complex a technique like that was, it was certainly beyond Shikamaru's ability by a great margin. Kurenai is keeping her hands together, and Shikamaru thinks it's to maintain the jutsu, but she's continually adjusting where it is to account for all the friendlies running around the village. He can see the nearly transparent gray shifting and stretching to keep one ninja in the dark and the other in the light. Running to Baki's side, Kurenai shifts in place to keep track of all the fighters erupting throughout the village, making sure that her allies maintain an advantage. At last, following her instructions, Shikamaru turns to run, but beyond a certain range the natural fog remains, and he couldn't see anything on the way in. Thus, he has no idea which path leads to the northern exit. Following what he thinks is correct, Shikamaru ascends a small hill, and the path he's on leads to the mouth of a cave that leads into a mountainside. This clearly wasn't the path he took. Slowing to a stop, he squints into its opening, only for dozens more rock ninja to pour from its entrance and overtake him. And that's the end of today's episode. Trouble's a-brewin'. I'm sure Ino and Sasuke are fine, despite being overtaken by a panicked mob of fleeing innocents. Shikamaru, though, there are a lot of Jonin very close to aid. Speaking of which, I wanted to finally bust out a genjutsu that Kurenai would be capable of, but of enough of a scale that none of the Konoha 12 could currently replicate. It's a difficult business, not only creating what I want to be a clear scale between tiers of ninja, but also to execute well on it. If there were fewer ranks, it would be obviously much easier to describe. For the most part, I think the line between Genin and Chunin in terms of power blend pretty well. But Jonin is a clear, stark difference. And again, there needs to be precise distinction between a run-of-the-mill Jonin and an Anbu. And Anbu aren't meant to be wildly powerful, they're just meant to be a master of the craft. So you could have someone like Asuma, who's, for the sake of this example, just as powerful as Kakashi. But Kakashi has mastered the technical side of being a shinobi. He's quiet when he needs to be, deadly when he needs to be, and his chakra control is on point. Just as I also tried to make it clear that when those 1000 rock ninja attacked Konoha, had Jiraiya been the defender and not Minato, he'd certainly have died in the defense. That's not even to say Konoha would be taken, but where Jiraiya would lose his life in that situation and all the Anbu would have to take part, Minato simply got a headache with just 6 Anbu helping. Focusing back on the episode, there was a fair bit of discontent between the members of Team Kurenai there. I wonder what the straw was that broke the camel's back. Ino tried to keep the peace, but I don't think it was working so well. Each of them have an extra technique to either hone or learn, and we'll see some of that fruition in the future, of course. And the Sanbi spoke. But why? Was that just another random red herring? Or was there a purpose behind its talk? I also obviously changed its voice. All that and more in the next exciting episode of, well, the rewrite. Without further ado, the sky's the limit.